Kia ora and good evening, and welcome to the 56th episode of the Huddy Hui. It's been a busy Wednesday, starting off with the Rongotai versus Silverstream Traditional. We'll talk about that one later on, and then of course we just had to broadcast the two girls' finals for college sport this evening, and St Mary's taking out both of those. But it's Huddy Hui time, and Petone, the victors of the Swindell Shield, and now they head off into the Jubilee Cup round, 4 weeks of finals football. It's going to be riveting stuff, and our guest tonight all knows what it's like to play at the top level of professional rugby. He's a former Wallaby, played for the Western Force, debuted for the Wellington Lions last year, and has been playing this trade for the Petone Rugby Club. Our guest tonight is Pek Cowan. Pek, many thanks for coming on the Hui. Tell us about Petone Swindell Shield success versus Wainui, and how you found your time at the Petone Rugby Club.
Yeah, well, obviously the game against Wainui was always going to be tough. I've been clued up on the history of I guess the lack of winning that had happened at Wainui's home ground for Petone. It's been a bit of an Achilles heel for the club for many years. And, the game meant a lot to the club, and, you could see that by the support that we had, people coming over to watch, especially some of the old boys from Petone who have been there for many years and kind of been waiting for this moment for, I think, almost 10 years in the making, or 12 almost. So, the game itself was as expected, to be fair. Wainui were there to ruin the party, and, and we had quite a bit of pressure on us to make sure that we delivered what we had been able to deliver throughout the year. I'd obviously come in a little bit later throughout the season, but it was a tough fought match. We pretty much did it by the skin of our teeth, really, with 3 tries and a penalty try to pretty much get us over the line. So, yeah, hard fought battle. Wainui were never going to make it easy for us, and I think there were quite a few good lessons in that game for us as well.
Have you found rugby in Wellington Club Rugby and the Petone Club? It's a very special place, and how have they responded to you joining their ranks?
Crazy story. Like my dad actually played for Petone many years ago, and as a young kid, from about the ages of about 4 to around 7 or 8, I distinctively remember growing up around Petone. My dad was actually part of a team in '84, I believe, that kind of won the Swindell and went on to actually win a Jubilee Cup. So, although I haven't had a hell of a lot of time at the club, my family roots are there, and I did play there as a junior as well. So, I guess how have I been received? It's quite interesting. I tend to find myself speaking a little bit more with some of the older guys simply because they knew my dad. But my dad passed away about 12 years ago now, and he's actually got. I requested and he was granted the okay from Petone Rugby Club to actually put the Petone Rugby Club emblem on one of his tombstones. So, it means the club meant a lot to my dad, and just naturally it just easily means a lot to me, just because he was someone that I looked up to as a kid, and having spent a lot of time there, like I said, it's been it definitely is a family orientated club. They're welcoming with open arms, and like I said, the older generation probably, to be fair, speak to me a little bit more, but in saying that, the boys, within the Prem's team and even some of the other guys, have easily welcomed me on, and it's been quite enjoyable, actually. Absolutely.
We'll get to your time in the Wallabies jersey very soon, but you were part of a very special rugby match a few weeks ago, the All Blacks Legends game in Madrid. Tell us about that experience, not only having to do the haka for the first time, but also playing alongside some great All Blacks like Dan Carter.
Yeah, that was probably one of my greatest experiences playing rugby, with regards to, I guess, the caliber of player that I was used to playing against throughout my career, spanning from 2006. I'm probably going to show my age a bit here, but from 2006 up to 2017, I pretty much played against every single one of those guys in their prime for their respective Super Rugby teams. And, even guys like Tana Umanga, who, I just looked up to as a kid growing up, at being a Petone man himself. And, it was a really unique experience. Got given the opportunity, a call, actually from Luke McAllister, kind of mentioning that they might need a prop to fill in their spot. And initially I kind of said no way, just because, I know what mana and pride the black jumper holds. And I guess, it's something that you earn. You don't just get given. But, they assured me that they would love to have me alongside them. And so I took the opportunity, and it was just an awesome occasion, an amazing week. Like you said, I got to rub shoulders with some of the greatest players to wear the black jumper, in my opinion, or definitely in my era of, that between those 2006 to 2017, just an amazing experience. And then obviously being born and bred here in Wellington, and actually being from Ngāti Toa, where the kamate haka is actually originated from, it actually meant a lot to myself, but almost more to my family, for me to be able to do that and actually represent myself, but my family as well in that moment for that one game. And I kind of felt bad because I'm never probably likely going to get another black jumper ever again, irrespective of what level it's at. So I actually felt quite bad for the opposition loosehead, who was really, really keen to swap a jumper. And I was like, sorry, man, I'm going to keep both of them, because, my grandfather, who's my namesake, has already taken that jumper. He's already told me, yep, you bring that one home. And then, I've only got one left. So unfortunately he didn't get it, but the week was amazing. And so was the game. It was awesome.
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and particularly the treasure of the jersey. It's really important. You said you were Wellington born, but tell us about your early playing career and where you went to school.
So once I left New Zealand when I was 13. Moved with my dad to Sydney, and I went to Narrabeen Sports High School, which is just the sports. Well, it was a public school, but it was a sports targeted. Well, they had targeted sports programs for all sorts of sports. So I thought that was great. But funnily enough, I was actually playing golf at the time. So I was playing a lot of golf, and actually went there on a golfing scholarship. Started playing a bit of golf with the local club there, and Long Reef Golf Club. And it just so happened that one of the guys there kind of asked me if I knew how to play rugby, because, from New Zealand, surely you know how to play rugby. So naturally I was like, yep, sweet as, I love it. I'll come down. And it kind of happened really quickly from there. So I think from the following year, pretty much, I kind of went through school-age rugby, making Australian schools and Australian under-19s, and at the time there was still there were still 21s competitions as well. And out of school is when I signed my first full-time contract with the Force, and that pretty much I fell in love with Perth as an 18, 19-year-old, and stayed there for 12 years, and just absolutely cherished that time that I had there. Looking back now, it's just, some amazing memories, some amazing people come through those doors, coaches, staff, you name it. We had to create our own family environment, because similar to more isolated teams, you tend to have to create your own environment, because a lot of people aren't necessarily from there. And, for that 12 years, we made had a good go at creating that culture with the Force. And, anyone who's ever there, they're kind of Force family forever, as I'm sure that's the case with many other teams involved with rugby. And then after 2017, when the Force kind of, I guess, were cut out of Super Rugby, that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So I just chose to apply my craft somewhere else. And that's when I went to Japan and took up a contract player coaching there for about three seasons now. and enjoyed that as well. Had some success there, which was great. And I guess the challenging thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that I was able to go over there and do something slightly different, which was actually coach as well, and in particular scrum coach, which has been fantastic. It was fantastic for my development, and kind of brought the love back in the game for me, just because of the different aspect of the challenge that I had while being there. And then, we ended up choosing to move back to New Zealand. And at that time, I wasn't too sure if I'd continue playing, just because I'd had a great career, and I was quite content with everything that I'd achieved. And but I just had that competitive nature and attitude that I think I had a couple of conversations, and things kind of snowballed a little bit further to the point that I was able to represent the Wellington Lions, which, again, being from Wellington, being able to represent your city is pretty special. And for me, it was just another one of those moments that not too dissimilar to the classic All Blacks match that I just was blessed enough to be involved with. It was just something that I never thought I'd get the opportunity to do. And, I threw everything I could at that and just really enjoyed each and every week, simply because I wasn't sure if that would be my last season. Fingers crossed I'll be able to do it again this year. That's kind of the plan. Had a little bit of a hiccup against Wainui, and I kind of strained my calf a bit, so that's kind of leaving things in limbo a little bit. But hopefully I can have some more conversations with Leo and the medical staff there, and see if we can't try and, I guess, sort something out. But because the desire is still there. It's just a matter of, I guess, are they prepared to help me do the work? And I'm always willing to do it, but it's just one of those things. I've never seen myself as a liability in the team, so I'd hate to have that on me if I was one, which isn't, it's a scary thought for someone who's been doing it for so long and been able to contribute so much. So it's I kind of left that ball in their court, and I'll continue to make sure I just keep doing my training as I am and just see how we go. But yeah, I guess that's the nuts and bolts of my career. I haven't really gone to a hell of a lot of teams because generally where I go, I normally love, and being back home is no different.
Western Force Foundation member, and you've gone into great detail about your time at the Force, but tell about the fan base and out there in Perth. You mentioned about the isolation, and of course the Crusaders even found it tough to play there for a few years. But around that time of 2017, you said it was a tough time and it was left a sort of sour taste, but the fans and also the general public really got behind the Force, and now they're back in Super Rugby. They've got good backing, they've got good support. Is the future still strong for the Force?
Yeah, I think when you think of the Western Force, you can't not think of the support and the fans that we have. We've literally had fans there that I remember seeing. They had young kids there, for example, and then by 2017 these kids are 12, 13 years old, and you see them and they've grown up with you in a crazy way. So those are the kind of supporters that we have there, and irrespective winning or losing. And with the Force, it was always, we were so close, but just never close enough. For many, many years, we'd lose so many games within that one try bonus point or something like that, that would just, you couldn't quite put your finger on it sometimes. And, irrespective of that, those same people would come to every single game, to the point, some of them would drive down from Busselton, which is it's a good hour and a half, like straight driving on a highway all the way into Perth, stay the night somewhere and then go back on a Sunday morning. That kind of support, I guess, similar thing. You really enjoy seeing those people, so that you're not just playing for yourself, you're playing for those people that you see in the stands week in and week out. And I guess with support from Twiggy Forest, obviously they've got the financial backing, and it's all about, I guess, trying to make sure that they can maximize, because they've got a really awesome ethos where they want to develop rugby in Western Australia. So they try their absolute best with all their pathways through club rugby, through all their academies, through their women's program, that, the majority of their players come from Perth. And, that's a really admirable thing. And I guess trying to get that balance right between local players, local talent, and bringing in, I guess, those big name players to really try and cement down more consistent performances is always a juggling act. But, if I know anything about Perth, is people from Perth absolutely love Perth. And, when things happened like they did in 2017, it's not just the Western Force that got affected by an Eastern state decision. It was Western Australia. Like, that's one thing that people tend to overlook, is that the Western Force are Perth-based, but we represent all of WA, and that is a humongous state, like huge. And, as soon as that happened, that's when we really got government support, just the general public and community support from all the other Perth-based teams or Western Australian-based teams. And, we got to the point where, Twiggy Forest, I think he offered $30 million, to keep the force where they are. And, they still chose and opted to not keep us. So it left a pretty sour taste in the mouth. But in saying that, if anything, it's galvanized, the Western Force as a franchise. It's galvanized the people who hung around and hung tough. And, I feel like it's also galvanized the rugby community there as well. So irrespective of whether or not they stay in Super Rugby, which I don't think, I just feel like they can't leave. They offer too much in so many different ways, commercially, etc. But I can't speak more highly of the place, what it represents for me anyways, and the opportunities it'll continue to not only give to local talent, but they will be somewhere where players will eventually want to be at and want to go to.
The most recent drama, of course, in the last week and a half has been the alleged Australian split from Super Rugby. If that did happen, what would the options be? Would they follow AFL, NRL style format if that happens? And your thoughts?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And in my opinion, I actually think it could potentially be the right thing, simply because Australian rugby probably needs to invest a bit more money into their grassroots, because they're not developing the players that they once were, in order to to fill Super Rugby teams willy-nilly, like, your New South Wales, your Queenslands, who used to have oceans of talent, where initially the Western Force, for example, took 15 to 20 players, top players from Queensland, but they still had a top team. The same with the Waratahs. Took, I was based at the Waratahs and I was in the academy there. They took guys like young guys like myself who, had the potential and had the ability to play Super Rugby and pulled us all together. And have had another team or had the Western Force been announced now and trying to draw from the talent pool they have now, it probably, it just wouldn't be feasible. And in all fairness, without the right infrastructure in place and the planning in place, it's really, really hard to fill Super Rugby teams with quality players like that. That's the sad truth in Australia at the moment. Not to say that the Super Rugby teams at the moment don't have it. Absolutely they do. But I think in order for that talent pool to continue to grow, it may actually be the best idea for them to almost create, well, as they already have the NRC competition, however, pretty much flood it with professional players and bring back the pride that certain club rugby competitions have. For example, Shoot Shield in Australia.
Yeah, amazing.
It's amazing. I played for Warringah. I lived in Mona Vale for a long time when I went to school at Narrabeen Sports. And that club have won a couple of championships, and the crowds that they had at those games were unbelievable. You know, you took in 30,000 strong. That was more than what the Waratahs are getting, you know, and they're getting them consistently because they're creating the passion within the local area. So, you know, the Manly Warringah game, for example, is huge. You know, depending on where it is will depend on the crowd. You know, if it's played in Manly, obviously it's mostly going to be Manly supporters, but you know, they get that opportunity to then play it in Warringah, and it's massive, you know, and other teams have those same rivalries, which is I think it's something they need to capitalize on. You know, how they do that, you know, that's up to them. And you know, they need to rebuild, and they're probably, in all fairness, they probably needed to do this for a long time. Because the reality is a lot of players move and play AFL. A lot of players move and play rugby league. A lot of like you look at all the talent throughout those sports, you could easily get some of your best locks from AFL. You could easily get some of your best back rowers from rugby league, and some of your best game drivers from rugby league. And you know, there's the talent pool in Australia is massive. They just need to figure out a way in order to cast their net as wide and as fast as the AFL and the rugby league, for example, have done. It's a tricky way to do it. How they do it, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll leave that to the power brokers in particular, but definitely that Shute Shield is simply amazing rugby there. And of course, also you had the honour of representing the Wallabies. Excuse me, sorry. And you were selected to play against Italy. How did you find out that you made the Wallabies squad? 10 appearances for the Wallabies. And what was it like running out for them at Melbourne when you played against Italy?
Yeah, a funny story about this, actually. I just come off a great year in 2009. Just showing my age again. But I just come off a great year. And I distinctively remember I went to JB Hi-Fi to go and purchase either some headphones or something like that, just to reward myself. And I got back in the car, and I remember pumping my music. And, you know, back in those days, you didn't really have the Bluetooth, you know, connected or anything like that. It was just plugged in the auxiliary, and away we went. Oh, no, sorry, I don't even know. It might have been a CD. I'm not too sure. But
CD or one of those Apple iPhones or whatever they're called.
Yeah, that was it. Jeez, and I had the music pumping, and I didn't realize I missed a call. And I got home and saw this call, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll check it. And I checked because I didn't know the number, so I checked it, and it was like, oh, g'day, Pek, Robbie Dean's here, just giving you a call. Congratulations, you've made the Wallabies, but I'd love for you to give me a call just so we can confirm everything, because we have a few things that we'd like you to do, and we'd like to fly down to Sydney, you know, as one of our bolters. You know, give me a call back. And I tell you right now, I saved his number, and I made sure I never ever missed a call from Robbie again. But then obviously getting the opportunity to debut in Melbourne against Italy. It was a crazy experience, to be fair, because like I'd said and mentioned, like being born and bred from here, and I guess being fairly closely connected to my culture here, because I came through, you know, Kohangarel and Te Arawhanui. So I learned a lot of my Māori, or I learned a lot in Te Ao Māori. And, you know, obviously having to leave that behind and go to Australia, it just, I don't know. It was unique in its own way. It was awesome though. Like I wouldn't change it for a thing. And I guess one of the biggest moments was that I just remember walking out, and we stand in the tunnel, and you kind of get ready to get called on, and I kind of look around, and you know, I've got the great George Smith as my captain for that particular game, and I'm number 1 and he's number 7. So normally the captain stands out there. And, you know, 1, 2, all the way through to 15 or 23, 22 at the time. And I just remember this moment, not during it, but when I watched it back, is George Smith is just cool, calm, and collected. He's done this many, many times, and this is what experience gives you. It gives you the ability to, I guess, understand the moment, take in the moment, but get ready to go. And you literally see a young Pek Cowan at the back of him, kind of not really sure. My emotions are everywhere. Physically, I'm just fizzing, and it was an awesome game to be a part of. We did a great job, and we got the win, and it was just one of those weeks where Robbie Deans didn't elude anything throughout the week. They named the team on the Thursday. Just been ripping into trainings, and I never expected to be called into any squad, to be fair. So just to be there, I was just loving the moment. And just once he had named that team, I just couldn't believe. I thought, if anything, I might get a chance off the bench and get a bit of experience that way. It was just awesome. At 23, I was kind of already playing Test footy, and I hadn't played a hell of a lot of Super Rugby, to be fair. So debuting in 2006. And 3 years later, there I was. So, again, a pretty awesome experience in its own right. The Australian jumper just has so much pride. You see it and you feel it. It's the same as you would expect. It's pretty special.
What was your toughest Test match in the Wallabies jersey?
Oh, you know what? The toughest one was one that I didn't actually get on.
Oh.
I know it sounds strange, right? But I remember there was a game. We actually played Samoa, and it was a boil-over. They beat us.
That's right, they did.
Yeah. They beat us. They beat us.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. 2011, and I just never seen so many massive hits connect. You always see them attempted, but they just never normally stick, and you brush them off, and it's a 2-on-1, bang, bang into the corner, and eventually you've broken the spirit, and away you go. And this particular game, I just one after the other, after the other, after the other, just huge hits, big line breaks. They played with so much passion that game. Not that they don't every game, but this particular game, it was just you almost sitting there oh, geez, when I get on, I need to watch myself, and that's a very rare kind of way to feel at that level. You're almost well, put me on because I'll do a better job. But in that particular game, they couldn't miss. They had the bounce of the ball, and it was a probably not a bad one to miss. I think just kind of sit there and it was a tough one. Absolutely.
Who's the best player you have marked in Test rugby, and who's the toughest you've played against?
It's always a hard one as a front rower because I'm normally marking anyone really close to the ruck. But I guess, guys like Bucky Spother, those big South African men who are just humongous men. You wouldn't necessarily say they're the most skillful or the fittest, but there's no getting away from them. They only run straight at forwards really, really close to the ruck. So guys like them, I guess scrummaging wise, I always say it, Yanni Duplessis in his day, so from the Sharks, and also the Franks brothers in their prime, with the Crusaders and that. They're just a well-oiled machine throughout every year, especially during my time playing Super Rugby. It was just always the biggest game of the year, irrespective of how they were going. And for the most part, they were top three, every single year. Probably those guys, set piece wise.
What's your thoughts on the metre and a half push in club rugby and New Zealand rugby at the moment to the domestic game? And do you think it's necessary or not?
That's a tricky one. I guess my question with that ruling is, are we catering for the safety of players, or are we bringing down the standard because the ability isn't quite there? From what I've seen, and this is nothing against anyone, but I guess from what I've seen, the standard probably isn't quite where it could be here in Wellington. Not through lack of effort, absolutely not, and not through lack of experience. It's probably just, I don't know. I didn't actually know that rule, to be fair. And we actually, I think it was, I can't remember which game it was now. We started pushing and everyone was saying stop, and I kind of was like, oh, something happened, and people were saying, oh no, you can't go past 1.5 meters. And then the other interesting one was crouch bind set, and we kind of had a little dig and it kind of slipped over, and then we moved to golden oldies, where it's just an uncontested scrum and the ball goes in and out. Another interesting one, I get it from picking up the speed, I guess, of the game, keeping the ball in play. But I guess for someone like myself who's probably I just having coached scrums and having literally been involved in every single rule change from professional rugby from 2006 to now, I'm probably a bit of a purist when it comes to scrummaging, and I relish the challenge with each and every scrum, because you've got an opportunity every single time to try and get one over the guy in front of you, and that's a rare concept in rugby. It's, you kind of every single scrum you're pretty much going against that same guy, which is a pretty cool part of scrummaging. And I guess my only question would be, are we catering for safety or are we catering for ability? But the guys who make the rules see merit in it, I guess. And I guess, their decisions are ones that they don't take lightly. And I guess ultimately player safety has to be paramount. But I guess, when you go to Super Rugby, or I was just watching the Māori All Blacks play Ireland just then, and if you don't have the ability to scrum, you're going to struggle to get to that level, that test level. And just watching the All Blacks then, they push well past 1.5 meters. Yet the opposition popped up. They went 4 or 5 meters, 5, 6 meters. The ball spits out. They get the ball back. That's a win. But sometimes, when you think of them having to stop at 1.5 meters from that point, different result. It's a different result. So then the game isn't being played, in my opinion, fairly. They probably wouldn't get that turnover, and the game maybe is a little bit different. But again, player safety, I guess, is probably the main priority here. So in that regards, you can't complain with that. I would never want to injure someone in a scrum, and nor would I ever want to get injured in a scrum. I've been very close to that a couple of times in my career, and it's a really scary place. So I guess in a nutshell, maybe a bit more understanding, potentially like a regional coaching development thing that gets around to clubs. There's definitely merit in that. There's definitely merit in upskilling in those areas, especially, if you're playing Prem Rugby, you're very committed to playing for your club. And I don't know any front rower who wouldn't want to get better at their craft, because one, it's safer, two, it's more enjoyable, and three, it makes for a better spectacle for people to watch, because they will see a genuine battle in the front row and with the forward packs. But yeah, I guess that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. You do a lot of work with younger players, ones that are ambitious in their scrum training. You've done a bit of work with Tony and also up the road at Silverstream. What's one piece of advice that you give to those young men?
With scrummaging, it's probably not one particular piece of advice. I think what I do give them is I give them understanding. I give them clearer understanding of what their role entails, how to execute it as best they can. And I guess the only bit of advice is that I try and give is just honesty with what I understand and what I don't understand. There's no one right way to do anything, and I do explain that when I do work with them. And the same with Petone. But I guess a lot of my stuff comes strictly through experience. And I guess the advice that I do try and give them is to trust in their own process. So, each and every person has a slightly different process. And I guess I like to work with what they have already instead of trying to change people up. So, yeah, I guess trust their process, and then I guess just enjoy it, I guess, would be the biggest thing. Enjoy the development, because you do see their enjoyment factor grow the more that they understand, and the more the penny drops with certain parts of their setup or their scrummaging or things like that. So, yeah, be that.
Final question for the night, Pek. Norths on Saturday. Win or lose, we get an extra life. You go to the semi-final, or you go off to a prelim semi. Thoughts on Norths? Petone beat them earlier in the season, but they're getting quite strong, and they've got the likes of Duplessis, Karefi back.
Yeah, and someone like Dupes brings so much mana for Norths. He's just, I played with him with the Lions. He's an inspirational leader. He leads by example, and he doesn't say too much. I love that about him. He's a man of action more than words, and it's almost with his position he kind of is forced to speak, which is totally fine. But he's more comfortable with action, and it will make for an interesting dynamic out there. I think, Tupo Sapawanga is one of our more senior back rowers, so he'll probably have the task of trying to contain someone like Dupes and get the forward pack up. It's going to be an interesting game. I'm actually really looking forward to it. Like I said, there were some good lessons that came out of the Wainui game, and I just hope we have the ability to I guess, take on the lessons that we had learned in that game, transfer them into the Norths game, and really give a clinical performance, which I know both teams are going to be going out there to do. And yeah, it should be a great tussle.
Well, Pek Cowan, it's been fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui. It's been a great, insightful interview, particularly in the role of the scrumming department. It's an area I'll never get to experience, but many thanks.
Mate, you don't want it. You don't want it.
No, I don't want
it. If you don't have to, that's for sure.
And hopefully we will see you out there later in the season with the Lions, all going well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed.
Cheers. Have a great evening.
Cheers, Brad.
Pek Cowan, what a great interview. Former Wallabies and Western Force prop back here in his hometown of Wellington and helping out Petone and also some of the younger generation coming through. Well, it's the finals round of Swindell Shield has come to an end, and we're now into the Jubilee Cup section. And let's look at the matchups here. In the 1-4 section, we've got Petone versus Norths and Hutt versus Porniki. Well, better be nice, because one, Pek's a Petone man, and two, Wayne Smith gave me this jersey today, and so I'll be picking Petone. Make sure I'm on the safe side there. Hutt versus Paniki. Paniki, well, probably got an average of plus 34 in the Swindell Shield, but Hutt seem to be going right, and I hope to say this, but Paniki might just fall short there. Tawa OBU and Ori's Maris St. Pat's. These are great matchups here, but I'm suspecting Tawa just hitting the right notes in the finals time will come through and take that one. And Ori's Maris St. Pat's. Ori's with Julian Savia back in their ranks, and also Fidel. They're looking very strong. So I think Ori's at Kilbirnie Park, which is their temporary home ground, will take that out as well. Rongotai took on Silverstream today, 10-3 at halftime. It was the exact same scoreline at halftime when they took on Wellington College last Wednesday. But unfortunately, Silverstream and their forwards just had a bit too much power, and they powered away to win 27 points to 3 to get themselves top of the table and give them 10 days rest before they take on Scots College next Saturday. And games on the first 15 this Saturday is Hibs versus Mana, Wairarapa College hosting Scots and Masterton. And the game I'll be calling on Sideline.live is Wellington College versus St. Bernard. St. Bernard's fourth at the moment, Wellington College second, but Wellington College, 3 games in a week. They had the annual quadrangular tournament. They took on Nelson in the first round, and they just lost that one narrowly. Stanley Solomon missed a penalty kick to win that game, or to draw that game, to put them in the final. And then they went down just narrowly to Whanganui Collegiate. So that would be an epic game, that one this weekend. So there's the Huddy Hui for this week. We'll be back next Wednesday for our 57th episode, and we'll see what the second week of the Jubilee finals looks like. Many thanks to our guest, Pek Cowan. Ciao for now.